43 Fayette Street in Manlius, New York. If you come in and you're like, where the heck are they? It's like that ominous, I almost feel like an angel on a cloud right now because everybody's at the cafe underneath us and then there's seating upstairs. And so you can hear us, but you have to look up, so to speak, which is kind of cool. We're here with Jason Leone, the head coach of the Oswego State Lakers men's basketball team. And proud to have you back here, Jason. How you doing, man?
Great to see you. I really appreciate you having me back. Really enjoy having a little coffee and enjoying a nice morning with you, Dan.
And I think it's a perfect morning to talk about basketball returning because there was like almost ice on my car today. There was that weird, like dew, frost on the car, and I was like, oh man, I don't want to get the scraper out anytime soon. But it gives you that. I mean, it's weird how fall wasn't here. And then it kind of just came in the last week or so. Do you get, when you see the leaves change, do you kind of get that, pumping in your veins, or does it happen before that?
Yeah, a couple things that happen for me. Golf clubs go in the garage on October 14th. You start seeing, like you said, the temperature change. It's rained here for about 4 straight days, almost literally.
Yeah.
And that's when I start leaving work and it's dark out. So, before the season starts, I'm out of there by 4:15 to pick up my kids from daycare at 5:15, and when the season starts, my wife becomes somewhat of a pseudo single mom for much of the work week, and then I'm leaving work and it's dark out. So those are a couple things that signify the basketball season coming for me.
Yeah, and I think being where we're at right now, it's such a humbling, kind of a calming feeling for me as a fan, that because we're fans, broadcasters, coaches, you got to be fans first, you got to love it, or how do you even get into it? So as a fan, I'm just happy to see that there's life with athletics again, that because D3 was living in a world of if you're in a state and following COVID protocol and you could play and you could get a couple games in, then you were allowed to, but maybe your conference wasn't playing, and maybe you played 5 games, maybe you played 10 games, maybe you played 1 game. But D3 was such a unique place because there really wasn't any set, like this is what we're going to do, here's the parameters, here's the amount of games you're going to play. It was just kind of some teams did, some teams didn't. So how did you navigate through all of that, knowing that, D3 was it was up to you. It was what state you were in. Like Dave Paziak, as you know, like he got to play 10 games. Enrico Mastriani, we talked about before we went on the air, got to play 1. So it was just kind of a very unique world.
Yeah, I think, part of it, when things started, we as a coach, we also are problem solvers. Being a leader of young people, you've got to sometimes, without being negative, you got to prepare for the worst, so it doesn't bounce on you without preparation. So,
yeah.
Through when the pandemic started, it was very clear early on that there was a very real possibility we weren't going to play. And part of it, Dan, is that just Division III, Division II, even low Division I, these are non-revenue generating sports. So to make it possible to play, the schools really have to make a commitment financially to doing that. And it also was at a time when, parents were not sending students back to school, whether it be safety or they were going to save the money because classes weren't going to be in person. And then you're asking the colleges on top of that to spend money with all of these testing protocols, and even like the game day management stuff that went on was so different, and it just everything costed money. So you prepare for that. Division I had to go on because, as you know, this NCAA tournament, the money from the TV funds every sport in the NCAA. So that was, at some level, unless something really went wrong, that whole thing was going to happen. So as a coach, you look around, you see that, and you just prepare, and you got to roll with it. It's nothing different than what we preach to our players, right?
Yeah, and with you rolling with the punches, you had put out a post describing what life was like, and you had said over 700 days since you had gotten to really coach your team. How did you handle it?
Well, I just sat, my wife and the kids were up in bed, and I was just sitting downstairs the night before, and honestly was really just reflecting. I keep a journal every season, and just during the season, and I just jot down notes so I don't forget them. I come up with these weird ideas and thoughts about players, different schemes we're going to use, things like I might be watching a game on TV and say, oh, I like that. We can incorporate that into our team, and I just want to have a notebook next to me right down. So I'm sitting downstairs last Thursday night, and there's no way I was going to sleep, and it was that alone moment where I was really emotional, and I'm just like thinking to myself, gosh, I haven't coached a basketball team. This is like, I got to make sure that I have a lot of fun with this, you know, no matter, because, we've practiced now 5 times in 4 days, and like, it's sloppy. You have to prepare yourself as a coach for patience.
Yeah.
We may not look the way we normally look early on because we've had this time off, but I think it's important to focus on, we're playing, we're practicing, we're together, we're building something, and that's something that we didn't have a year ago. So I think keeping proper perspective is something that really entered my mind, and really making sure we have fun with this and come to work with a smile on our face every day, no matter how bad it looks, or obviously through the wins we're going to have some smiles, but gotta be ready to tackle anything.
You made mention that you weren't going to sleep the night before. There's no way you were sleeping the day before practice open for most on October 15th. It's past Friday. Was it the little kid Christmas feel? Was it a little bit of not fear, but oh my God, I've been through all this, these 700 days. I don't want to go to sleep and wake up and get some news that it's not going to happen. I mean, what was it? How much was it Christmas, and how much was it like maybe superstition or speculation of like, I don't want to go to sleep and then get the bad news or something like that?
No, I just couldn't sleep. I mean, I just was, I had a million things running through my head, and the longer you do it, you want to make sure you keep things simple. Like there's a million ideas. So over these, 16 months, what I'm doing to get my basketball fixed, I'm talking to a lot of coaches, I'm meeting with people in person, I'm watching our video breakdown system Synergy, and watching all kind of things. So I've got 9 million ideas that I've accumulated over all this time. So now it shifts to, what can we functionally implement with our team that's going to be good for us?
Yeah.
Because I think one of the things that you do, especially when looking back at my first couple years as a coach, is you try to do too much. And I think with the guys we have, especially this year's team, after watching for 5 days, I think keeping it simple and giving them a little bit less, and maybe coaching more of like the fundamentals is going to be more important for this particular team. So it wasn't like a kid on Christmas thing. It was more just genuine excitement, and it wasn't youthfulness. It was just like, I'm just really genuinely happy I get to go back, and I'm planning for something. It gives you a little bit more of worth at work, and I'm involved on campus with a million different committees and things that I sit on and I teach, and that's nice. I enjoyed those parts of my job, but it's not. But I'm a basketball coach, and I want to get back to coaching basketball. So that, knowing that we're back there, that was incredibly liberating and therapeutic for me, and really excited to be getting going here.
Jason Leone hanging out with us here at Cafe Kubal. I would be remiss if I didn't play the music, because I spent some time on this. I got a good feel with this music. You know what I mean? So, and get back to basketball season and get that. When you hear the music in the gym, when you get to feel that in the arena, when that comes back again, do you have? Because I find music is very therapeutic for me. It is. I love getting in the car. I know some people hate driving. I love driving because, as you know, and I know, you and I go all the time.
Yeah.
So when I get in the car, it's my opportunity to, and I listen to everything. It's my opportunity to put on Drake, to put on Journey, to put on, I don't know, Luke Combs or something like that. But it gives me a chance to just kind of feel something, relax, take a breath. So do you have a song you want the team to come out to? Do you ever have a track or two where you think, hey, you know what? This is kind of like what I feel we are, or this is what we've been through. Do you ever have like that inspirational, like, you know what? Let's put something in the locker room, or let's put something out there when we come out for the game?
Wow, that's put me on the spot. I do like music too. my daughter loves Justin Bieber, and I do too. So we listen to a lot of Justin Bieber. I don't know if Justin Bieber is functional with coming out to a college basketball team, but
there's some good stuff.
Yeah. But that's what I listen to with my daughter all the time. She's a big fan, and we were supposed to take her to a concert actually, my wife and I, before. And the pandemic came, so that's a promise we have to make good on here once we get back to some normalcy with this stuff. So,
and I remember,
but I don't have a song for you right now off the top of my head.
I remember you mentioning that, and there's a few songs that he has, and there's a music video that he has, and I'm trying to think of it. Is it called Holy? It might be something along those lines, but it's about. The video is just great because it's about like being laid off during the pandemic and all this stuff, and then guy comes home from the military, sees Justin with his girlfriend walking, and they just been kicked out of like the hotel they've been staying in, and he says, I'm going in the direction of a warm meal, and invites them to the house on the day that he's returning to his wife and his 2 children. So it's a good story. So if you haven't seen that video and you're a fan and your daughter's a fan, I would say that you should watch it. We got a message here. From Lori, good morning, Dan and Jason, looking good. Ted said, what up, Goose? So
there's a story behind that name. So that's one of my college teammates from Lafayette, and that's my mother. So
shout out to Mom.
Yeah.
My mom means the world to me. How great is Lori? What are the best things about Mom?
Oh man, you just gave me goosebumps bringing up her name. I will say this: my mom and dad just celebrated their 49th wedding anniversary.
49.
Yeah.
Congrats. What's Dad's name?
Joe.
So Joe and Lori, happy 49th anniversary here from Cafe Kubal. You raised a great kid here, so you raised a really good one here. So you got siblings, though, right?
Yes, 3 of them. I've got my sister Lindsay. They're actually, my mom and dad are down there, watching their kids for a couple of days, outside of DC in Arlington, and then my 3 brothers. We all live up here within a mile of each other, here on the east side of Syracuse. So my brother Joe. Who's actually twins with my sister Lindsay, and then my brother Greg, then obviously Amber and I. So there's four children and 11 grandchildren now.
Okay, very awesome. I like it. Lori, who's your favorite? So I want to know. But the best. So they just celebrated their 49th anniversary. What's the best thing about Mom? What would you, if you could only pick one thing about Lori and one thing about Joe, what would you pick? Each of them individually.
They kind of go hand in hand, but they're just Mom is incredibly delicate and caring, and just loves children. You know what I mean? So that's something that's evident. Just loves her grandkids. And they have a very special and unique relationship together, my mom and dad. So it's something that married couples should try to emulate. And my dad is just an incredibly giving guy. So just. They both are, so just wonderful people, wonderful to talk to. That's it,
Yeah, I can tell that we got some emotion from Mr. Leone here.
Yeah.
Lori said all of her children are her favorites. Good answer. Good political answer, Mom. I like it. But it's true. Your children should all be your favorites. I did say to my dog, because I don't have, human kids, but I got Lily.
Oh,
So I said to Lily that no matter how many daughters I have in my life in the human world, she's my favorite daughter because she was my first.
Sure.
And she's rocked with me through a lot of stuff. So I have to keep that for her. But you said your parents have a very unique relationship that people should emulate. What is it about their marriage that makes you say something like that? That because marriage these days, people are fickle, right? We live in a world where it's like, I think I like them, and then like 8 months in, 6 months in, couple of years in, I'm gonna get somebody else. And it's kind of like people are doing it like they switch clothes. So why are your parents in a different world than that? Why do you think they're something that should be emulated?
They're just rock solid. It's really that simple. Just rock solid people. They raised 4 kids. I think at one point I did, because all of us are raising kids, and we got 2, my wife and I, and we're like, this is unbelievable. How much work and ups and downs emotionally. And my parents at one point had 4 under the age of 5 or something like that, or 6. And my mom was stay at home. My dad was working, for Niagara Mohawk at the time, and working his tail off. And it's just, when you get older, you know, you realize, geez, how the heck did they do all that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, running around with all the sports, doing all that. So I mean, they're just rock solid. You know, just whatever they have done over the course of a long period of time, you can always count on them. So I think that's a really good quality to have.
Yeah, you know, and I think it's awesome. 49 years is it's
an accomplishment.
and they've
let me
known
tell
each
you.
other obviously before that.
Yep, they
so,
both went to Hartwick College. That's where they met.
Yeah, so there's been a lot. So
Yep.
how are you a good husband to Miss Amber?
Oh boy, I think she's a better wife to me. So, you know, we just I think we complement each other pretty well. You know what I mean? So we both have type A personalities, and
Yeah.
we're both, I would say, a little bit more on the emotional side. So I think both of us, we challenge each other in the right way, and
Yeah.
but we've got all the essentials. You know what I mean? So grew up in some good family things, value family, and we're both hard workers. So, you know, even though there's some challenging things with raising kids and both of us commuting an hour away from home, you know, we buckle down when we have to and do what we're supposed to do.
Yeah, you know, and it is a very unique world. We talk about the world of a student athlete, but we don't talk about the world of a coach, husband, dad, or coach, wife, mother. And so how do you balance the fact that, I mean, when you're a coach, I mean, you go all in, but you also have to go all in as a husband to be successful, and as a parent, as a friend, as a son. You got a lot of jobs. How do you balance, hey, I want to make sure I'm talking to my siblings, talking to mom and dad, make sure I'm doing right by Amber, make sure I'm doing right by the kids, make sure I'm doing right by Oswego. How do you live in that world?
You know, some of it you don't have all the answers. You got to kind of live and, you know, and gain experience as you go. And
Yeah.
I mean, look, I don't have all the answers, but you know, one of the things I think is important, you know, with my kids is, given the odd nature of my job, where I'm, you know, this time of year from October to March, I'm really not at home at night during the week. I've got to make sure the days that I have off, like tomorrow, we don't have practice, like I'm going to be with my two girls, you know, and Amber's got something going on, so I'm going to have the girls, we're going to lacrosse practice, and my other daughter and I are going to grab something to eat and together, and that's our catch-up day, and then we have a day off on the weekend, and we do that. With my wife, we've always made a commitment once a week, especially during the season. We're going to go and do a date night, so her and I can catch up without the kids.
Yeah.
You know, those are a couple of things. But, you know, and then with the coaching, I've got to make sure that I make time, because we have a lot of guys on the team. I got to make individual time for each guy to talk to them about things outside of basketball. So, you know, listen, I've made a lot of mistakes over the course of time, but you got to make sure when you make some mistakes, and maybe you got to get yourself back in check, you do a good job of that, and be self-aware.
Yeah.
And be able to look at yourself in the mirror. So those are just some things, you know, whatever.
You are such an open book in a lot of these ways, and you do lead with emotion and lead with your heart, and I respect that and I appreciate that. I think that's what joins us as friends, is that you're a real person and you're not afraid to tell somebody that you care about them. And you just made mention of the fact that I take time, I make time every week to talk with my guys on the basketball team about things that are not basketball related. You said that, so hey, this is what I do, but there's plenty of coaches that I'm sure don't do that. You know, why is it so important to you to make sure that you set aside time to, you know, and I'm just gonna throw out, you know, random names here, but, you know, like, hey Steve, hey Pete, hey Joe, hey Todd, tell me about your girlfriend, tell me about your parents, tell me about, you know, you just went home for Thanksgiving, what was that like? Or I heard that you're, you know, really into, you know, playing Madden and whatnot, and the new one just came. I mean, just anything that shows them you listen, you know it. Hey, Certified Lover Boy came out. I know you're a big Drake fan. You know what I mean? Something that lets them know that you listen. Like, why to you, did you always do that, or were you inspired by someone, to a coach or a person, to say, hey, you know what? I got to make sure I talk to these guys about something outside of basketball. Well,
I think it's who I am, but then also you you spend a lot of time now. I've been doing this. I did this my 22nd year doing this, and coaching is a lot different now than it was when I first started. When I first started, we were still at the tail end of the Bobby Knight authoritarian model.
Yeah.
And look, certainly have some things, if you watch me during the games, that would lead one to believe that I have that authoritarian style personality to me on the court. But I think, the more you study coaching and people, and you've got to be very adaptable. So one of the things I've tried to do over, especially this last 10 years, as I get older, but my kids, the guys I coach, stay the same age, is I've spent more time going to symposiums and professional development things that involve how we best communicate with this particular younger generation. So I can talk like them. I can't always act like them, but just in the relationship building piece, it's no different than when you do a job or I'm going to work. If I feel like my boss or the person I answer to has a vested interest in me, that makes me happy when I go to work. Now, what we're doing isn't work, coaching a basketball team, but still the parents have entrusted me with their kids. They want to, they like basketball, but it's Division III. There's life after basketball. They want to know the person they're sending their kid to play for. So, the longer I do this, Dan, I really believe you got to be proficient in the X's and O's and that, but it really is more about your ability to communicate properly and relationship building. And simplicity is really a lost art. And I think in its simplest form, coaching is really, it's tactics, but at our level, it really is about getting to know people and what makes them tick and what motivates them, and then being there for them. I mean, they're away at college, mom and dad aren't there. You'd be shocked to know how many things go on during a normal academic year that challenge these kids to be happy all the time, and they need somebody to bounce things off of.
Yeah, and I remember being in college, and you have to. There were days where I just remember. I remember sitting in my room, just kind of like sitting, kind of squatting down in my room toward the wall, and just being like, in the right place. Is this what I want to do? How do I handle?
Especially as a freshman, right?
Yeah, you learn a lot. I remember my roommate that I was supposed to have, because I had been called to be a part of the basketball team and to come out there and to practice with them and see what I could do. So my roommate that I was given was a basketball player, and we never ended up rooming together. He didn't show. He was never in his room. I ended up rooming with this other guy, Pat, that I had met when we were doing orientation and whatnot, and we just got along. And so there were so many moments. There were different pieces where you really just needed, and I'm an open book, it was what do I do with this girl? What do I do with this class? What do I do with the fact that I said yes to a lot of things and I want to do them all, but my schedule is insane and I don't really feel like I have enough hours in the day. There were moments where you had to figure stuff out, and you had to figure it out. I was a couple hours away from my family. They didn't want me to go that far away, but they wanted me to have my own life. So I'm 2 hours away from my mom and my dad, Deb and Ralph, what's up? So you got to figure things out, and you had to grow and you had to learn. And there are things that I said to myself, there are moments that I had that some people have no idea, the things that I was considering. Should I do this or do this? Should I, because from the outside looking in, I made a decision, or maybe I stayed with something, but there might have been a thought of maybe I was going to go over and change this thing that I was doing, or maybe I was going to try this and get rid of that. So I think, life of a college kid, when you're talking about it, the first thing on my mind for me was, I'm a loving guy. I'm a romantic guy. I'm in my head trying to find my wife. So going through college, I did not find my wife, but it was, it was how do you deal with these situations and these circumstances, and you really got to kind of, bleed through it, so to speak. You got to sweat it out, I guess. You know what I mean? So it's not just basketball where you sweat it out. It's really with everything.
Yep, no question about it. Some great points there.
So Jason Leone here, Oswego State. Lakers men's basketball head coach, myself, Dan Tortora. We are live from Cafe Kubal. We do this every single month. We tour the Cafe Kubals, and we're at 343 Fayette Street in Manlius, New York this morning. And I love the fact that you said to me, you're like, hey, you're right in my neck of the woods, and I love Cafe Kubal. So that's, easy sell here for Mr. Leone, and my pumpkin spice chai is back. So that's what I care about as a fall baby. And I realized too, like, I love pumpkin anything, and I love pumpkin things in the window and all that stuff and decorations. Because seeing Halloween, I guess growing up as a kid, I saw that in the stores, and it meant my birthday was coming. Because my birthday is October 21st, Halloween's October 31st. So to me, it was whenever I saw that, I'm like, oh, well, my birthday's before that.
So your birthday's Thursday.
This Thursday, yeah.
Oh boy, good
So
stuff.
I'm excited, and I'm also, and I had this conversation yesterday, I love my birthday. I don't get like I'm older and I'm angry. I'm a kid. I love just simple sentiments. I don't need gifts. I don't need anything crazy. Just like to know somebody thought about you. Like somebody saying, hey, let's grab lunch. Hey, let's grab a coffee. Hey, I just wanted to call you for a couple minutes, see how your birthday's going. Those things are my gifts. I told my dad last night, he goes, what do you need? I don't need anything. I said, God is great. I genuinely don't need anything. I just want people to, on their own, if they want to, reach out.
Yeah,
That's all I want.
simple is good.
I'm a simple guy. So like you said, it's a lost art to be simple and to just, kind of plan things out. And I've learned a lot of things. You can get frustrated, you can get angry. Technologically, there's things that didn't work for me this week. There's things that frustrated me this week, this morning, last week, but you find ways around it. I've realized that when certain things don't work right or don't work as well and whatnot, that there's 3 ways for me to get there or 5 ways for me to get there. And you kind of just find a way to, it's kind of like driving. If I'm driving down this road, and this is the road I've always been down, and there's a detour, and I didn't have my GPS, and there was nothing to tell me where to go, I just figure it out.
Yep.
And then after a while, it becomes second nature. I have a photographic memory. I know that if this road's going to be blocked, I can go left down here. I can walk this pathway, cross over at this street. I'm going to find my way to the same place. Life is all about ad-libbing. And people that try to write it down, I mean, you can write it down, but life will never, ever, ever, ever happen the way you wrote it. And I think there's a quote somewhere in a movie that I can't take credit for, but it's like, and you just might, if you're lucky enough, have something even better than what you wrote. And, so do I get mad at the internet? Of course I do. We live in Scranton. We live in central New York, and the internet here is atrocious. So, but I also live in a world where I know that people are hearing it, they're seeing it, they're getting it. And if you say a positive message and you mean it with your heart, there's no way that God's not going to let this thing jump the lines it has to jump to get to where it has to go. That's how I feel.
Yeah. It's great perspective, honestly.
So, Jason, we talk about a lot of stuff. I ask you a bunch of questions. What do you want to talk about when it comes to Oswego State this season? I want to kind of just open the canvas to you, hand you a paintbrush. What's Oswego State this year? What do we look like? What do we feel like? What can we expect?
Well, I think I do want to mention a couple things.
Yeah.
I've had some great news over the last month with our program. We have some really positive staff changes.
Yeah.
Good things, not, I had an assistant coach that I was really close with, James Holmes, who was very, very influential in helping me coach our Sweet 16 team 2 seasons ago.
Yeah.
And then I really liked the group we have this year. He did an unbelievable job recruiting and with player relationships, and just he was really, from where he came into the program to when he left, he really took some big leaps with his professional development. And he just got, my job is not a full-time paying job, so I get younger guys that come and kind of earn their stripes a little bit for a year or two.
Yeah.
Sometimes get their masters, so they're working full-time hours for part-time pay. And he just got a big job at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, RPI. They're a really good program.
Yeah.
and he's now got his big break where he's making full-time salary money. So was really happy that that happened. And what that allowed me to do is, right when he left, there was an Oswego native who was close to our program, Derek Cahill, affectionately people call him D-Train, and he is somebody that, you know, I've known for a long time, and he wanted to get into college coaching, so he just graduated from Nazareth, so he moved right into James's spot seamlessly. And then I had another assistant coach, Matt Jacob, who was a big part of what we had done for a couple years. He decided that he was going to retire from coaching. So that was a big loss, but I was happy for Matt. He really gave us a lot in a couple years. And in his position, we slid in my student assistant for the last 4 years, who graduated from Oswego, Jake Pritchard, and now he's in a paid role with us. So that's really good. And my rock, Bill Farden, who's been with the program for 21 years, he is still with the program. He's kind of my offensive coordinator per se. And my life coach, our team's life coach, he's got an unbelievable way about him, and there's nobody, if they had a picture of Oswego basketball in the dictionary, his face would be right there. So really excited about our staff. And then we've got a great team. I really think if we can get some things tidied up, I think we got a chance to have a good season. We have some really talented, gifted players, but we're a little on the inexperienced side. But I'm really excited about these guys that I'm getting to coach right now, and I think we're going to have an opportunity to have a really good year. But our league is so tough, Dan. I don't think if they did a preseason poll, we wouldn't be picked first. But the potential of this particular team, because of our youth, where we could be in February, I'm really excited about kind of nudging them and pushing them along to get to where I think they can get to. So this will really be coaching 101 for me, because I'm looking at something right now through the first 5 days that is incredibly abstract. And I really see something, as long as some things fall into place 4 months from now, that could be pretty special.
You speak, and I love that, and I appreciate you breaking that all down. Your coaching tree is very important, because leadership isn't about leading yourself to the promised land. It's about leading everybody on that boat there. And when you see success come from those that work for you, work with you, where does that stack up to personal success when you see one of your assistants go on and get an opportunity?
Well, it's all part of it. Like my personal success is it's literally tied into what the program does. So we've got to, listen, this is not a big secret to anybody. You've got to get good people around you, and you've got to try to work with those people and make them think that you're working together, not that somebody is working for me. I really believe in empowering my assistants. I think I give them a lot of responsibility. I'm not somebody that looks over their shoulder with a ton of things. They get to coach, and they get to make mistakes, which are learning opportunities. But yeah, it's certainly a proud papa moment when you see, now that I'm in my mid-40s, I've had probably 7, 8 assistants, and all of them have moved from here and gotten something that pays them a little bit more and into a better situation. I think, some of them are head coaches. I saw Justin Stern was on here watching. Justin's the head coach at Casnovia College here locally, and he's done a great job there. He was one of my assistants. And anyways, you want to help your people move forward with their careers. And as you mentioned, that coaching tree thing is, it's certainly something that we're proud of here.
And to have your coaching tree be successful and see what they're doing, it's also the reality that you may face off against some of them, in the future. Does that excite you? The thought of, even like in a non-conference schedule, because I've talked to some coaches about this, where they'll schedule, maybe the former coach that was at the university or college that they were at, they'll go up against them, or they'll go up against a former, student in the world of Wilkes and Kings. You have Tara Machako, who was the head coach at Marywood University for the women's basketball program when Caitlin Hodge-Mahalis was there. Now, Hodge is the head coach at Kings,
Right.
so now you got player playing former coach. Do you like those kind of mix-ups? And when you're working on schedules, would you ever look at something like that saying, hey, you know what, I kind of want to have a little back and forth and see what they got?
It's not one of my favorite things to have to compete against somebody that you have a friendship with. It's just, those are intense moments, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
even more so than playing games against, it's not fun to recruit against, people that you really are in close quarters with, such as somebody that worked with you. So no, it's not like my favorite thing to do, to go and schedule somebody that worked with me. If it happens naturally, then that's fine, but no, it's not one of the things that I would look to do.
Not something that you would put yourself in.
I don't think so.
Now, the Maxfield men's basketball tournament is going to start things off for you at the Maxfield Gymnasium in Oswego, and that's going to start off the season here, which I'm excited about. You have Elmira College that you're going to play first, and then it'll be determined from there. And then Clarkson University, Nazareth, SUNY Cortland, Buff State, SUNY Brockport, Fredonia, so on here until we get to the St. John Fisher tournament, where you will be playing Rensselaer Polytech Institute. And so what we talked about, your former coach there, so you will have one of those opportunities. How are you preparing yourself to face your former assistant?
Well, that game's a long way down the road, so
Yeah.
I'm not even thinking about that right now. I don't think that's going to be, something that's going to be weighing on either team's mind. I think they have a team that's, ranked preseason in the top 25. We've been one of the more successful programs in the region, so I think it'll be more of, our teams going against each other with something to prove, and we're playing in a tournament, so
Yeah.
we're playing to try to get to the finals of that St. John Fisher tournament. So there's a lot more things at stake there than just that relationship.
And we look at the fact that, at the D3 level, you have more say, obviously, in how you're scheduling things. And this is something that I don't think we spend a lot of time on, enough time on, is that at certain levels, you really don't maybe have say, and in certain places that you're at. But in your case, you get to sit down and look at the schedule and say, okay, between away and home, and I know there's certain things in conference that you have to do, and certain concessions that every coach has to make, but to know that you're responsible as a staff to try and really figure this thing out, how important is that for you to the purity of basketball at Division III, that you're involved and that it's not just an AD coming to you going, here's your schedule?
Yeah, I think that's important. I had a former boss of mine at Mercyhurst University that just said, there's three things that are really, really critical to winning. And this is just his opinion, but I really thought about that, and I agree with him, and I've kind of carried it with me, and that's, your schedule, anything that involves recruiting, and then professional development. So when I communicate with the people I work for about where money is allocated and where I really want some autonomy, those are usually the three things. I got to have money to get better at myself and do things for our program that I think are meaningful.
Yeah.
And during the off season, I've got to have money to recruit, and I've got to have some autonomy with our schedule. Now, we don't have a ton of wiggle room because we're in a league. In Division III, we're allowed to play 25 regular season games.
Yeah.
18 of them are scheduled for us, essentially, by the conference office. And then we only have 7 games. But with those 7 games, because our league is so strong, you don't have to win our league to get to the tournament. But what you have to do as a coach, you got to make sure you strategically play really good teams so your strength of schedule is at a level that could potentially get you an at-large bid to the NCAA tournament, which is really hard to get. I think there's only 18 or 19 of those in the country out of 400 and something teams. So,
Yeah.
So we've really tried to, like this year, for instance, Elmira is going to have a good team this year. They have a new coach that is going to do a great job. And then if we're the second day of our tournament, SUNY Poly and Hobart, who was in the Sweet 16 2 years ago,
Yeah.
They're the other two teams in our tournament. Both of those teams are going to have exceptional records. So no matter who we play the second day, win or lose day one, we're going to have another really good team on our schedule. Clarkson's going to be much improved. St. Lawrence is going to be probably picked in the top 4 in the Liberty League. We play them. Nazareth College will be an 18, 19, 21 team. And RPI is nationally ranked. Second day of the Fisher tournament, we could potentially play St. John Fisher or Medaille. Both those teams will be really good. So we really we've really challenged ourselves with our schedule, which I like to do.
And with the few games that you can do non-conference, how important is it for you to put yourself in a situation where, you're, like you said, a lot of talent that you're going to be going up against. You went down the line to all of these schools that are going to really create a challenge, knowing that the SUNYAC already is going to give you everything that it can, because the SUNYAC is a very strong conference. How important is it for you to have that litmus test to see what you are to teams outside of the SUNYAC? Because, I know you're very humble, but you are an NCAA tournament team. I'm used to you going, I'm used to you advancing. So knowing that, how important is it for you to kind of, test who you are against something that you might see?
Yeah, well, I think it's critical, because you're not, if it doesn't work out and you lose the games, okay, great. You got to make your conference tournament. You got to win 3 games the last week of February to go to the tournament.
Yeah.
If you win them, it can only help you, in my estimation. I'm not a younger coach that's trying to establish that I can, win at a certain job. My record is, I could easily schedule 7 teams that maybe, we would be favored every game against, but, I served on the NCAA tournament committee before. I have a decent idea about what it takes to improve your strength of schedule. Playing bad teams with bad records, it sounds crazy, but winning those games it actually hurts you more than if you lose a game against a nationally ranked team. So, for instance, let's just say we take a random school. Hobart 2 years ago, they were really good. They won 23 games. Okay, we play them, but we lose to them.
Yeah.
That game is better for us, that loss, than if we beat a team that is not a very good team, that's, let's say, 10 and 15, or even like 13 and 12.
Yeah.
So playing somebody, especially if it's on the road, that's a 23 and 5 team, that I think is the best thing you can do for your program. If you are somebody that is, as you mentioned, used to be in the NCAA. Now, if you're, like when I got to Keystone, I was making an incredibly meaningless salary, and I wanted to make sure that our team and the team was a bad team. We had to get wins so we could become relevant to help us recruit.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I wanted to try. I loved my time at Keystone, but I wanted to try to get back up in this area and trying to win some games, become relevant. Whatever, do the best we could. That was an important part of that job for me.
Yeah.
But this is the expectations at this particular school are a little bit different, so we've scheduled that way. And look, I don't have all the answers, but that's kind of philosophically what we've tried to do.
No, and I can appreciate that, because you have to test yourself. You have to know who you are. And like you said, if we're play a bunch of teams that are not that great and we're going to beat up on them, what does it teach your team to go, okay, we're supposed to win this game, we won 106-60? You may lose some of these games against a really strong opponent in the span of seasons, right? You want to win every game, but sometimes it's going to fall the other way. If it does, it tells you who you are. And I think, arguably, and you're the coach, but I think it better prepares you. I think when you play that top talent, when you play those teams that are going to the tournament, when you play those teams that are ranked in the top 25, when you play those teams from conferences that are reputable, you're putting yourself in a situation where the committee knows those schools and they watch those schools. So you play those schools, they see you. So you might have lost 93-85, but maybe nobody else lost, or maybe everybody else that they beat, maybe they beat them by 20, maybe they beat them by 15. So now they're looking at Oswego State going, wow, they played them this year, they lost by 8, and in the last 2 minutes it was a tie game. and it came down to free throws. I mean, I think there's something to be said. What does the NCAA call it? And I know this is weird for fans, quality losses. But there's something to be said about, like you said, the weighting of things and how you compete.
And when I first got to Oswego, there was some games on the schedule, and it wasn't that they were bad games, but I found myself we were playing some schools that perennially weren't very good, 1 or 2 every year out of the 7 games.
Yeah.
And I found myself as a coach, in preparation for those games, all I was doing was trying to convince our guys, if you don't do the right things, these guys can beat you. They can upset you.
Yeah.
And I said, wait a minute. I said, this is ridiculous. This is not coaching. We're doing this, and then the game's sloppy. Our guys aren't playing well, and then we're still winning by a significant margin. I said, this is not really helping us.
Yeah.
And we took a little bit more of a shift in a different direction where, we tried to lift our SOS a little bit more. And I want to be clear, too, like part of that was we had a stretch where we were going to the NCAA tournament 4 out of 5 years, and I just felt like it was time, given how well we were recruiting and we had an All-American on the team,
Yeah.
we could, kind of ramp things up a little bit with who we were going to play in our non-conference.
Do you feel, speaking here with Jason Leone, Oswego State Lakers men's basketball head coach, live on-site, on location, wake-up call with Dan Tortora. You know our studio partner is Cafe Kubal, and once a month we tour the Cafe Kubals of upstate New York, and we're here at 343 Fayette Street in Manlius. If you haven't been out here, it is a giant behemoth of a building. It is a massive brown building that looks like coffee being poured, as it is striped different colors of brown and tan, and you can't miss it. They expanded the parking lot, tons of parking here, and where all the roads essentially converge into Manlius, it's like your welcome center to Manlius, New York, is Cafe Kubal. So, nice welcome center. Come here, get a great cup of coffee, get my pumpkin spice chai, get something awesome to eat. We've had some sandwiches here before, and that's your welcome into Manlius, which I think is a very proud red carpet welcome. So I can appreciate Matt Goddard and the team for that. By the way, Matt just got married, got to go to his wedding.
Oh, wonderful.
And 2 weekends ago. And beautiful wedding. Miss Amy looked extremely gorgeous. And I can honestly say it's, in my opinion, the most flawless, best wedding I've ever been to. Everything was great. The food was great. The way they treated everybody. The look of it, it was outside, inside. So we had the ceremony outside, and then we got to go inside and hang out. It was just a perfect day out in Skinny Atlas, and they're out in Hawaii right now. So I hope you're enjoying yourselves out in Hawaii and enjoying your time in the sun. So shout out to Matt and Amy, and congratulations on your bond. So with that being said, we go through so many different things with the NCAA. And you talked about, winning and going to the tournament, and so you become this team that is elevating itself. So now you want to challenge even more. Do you feel like you've become the challenge of other schools? Do you have schools call you that want to boost their SOS? Do you feel like there's been that shift where they're like, hey, we want to play Oswego because we know that this is a reputable, consistent program?
I mean, I don't know if I take notice of that, but I mean, we host a tournament every other year, and I would assume teams choose to come to the tournament because of an opportunity to play good games. I don't know, who's better than anybody else. I mean, there's a lot of good teams out there. It's not just us, so I'm not trying to convey that, we're the creme de la creme of who we play. But I think if you have a good program and you want to, you think you have a really good team, you want to certainly challenge yourself. And I mean, we have certain schools that we play every year that are somewhat local rivalries. We've always played Clarkson and St. Lawrence. Those games are on our schedule. We play Nazareth now every year. The coach at Nazareth was the former coach at Oswego State. He got his master's there, so he's an alum. And he has recruited Oswego County really hard. So that's a really good game to play because both teams are among the best in the region every year, and there's a lot of local ties in that game. We get a great crowd, so that's good. And then we play in an away tournament every year, and then we host a tournament. So the schedule is somewhat, we have some wiggle room about what tournament we choose to go to on the road, and we want to go to one where we know we're going to play a really, really top-level team on a neutral site game. typically when we go to the tournament, the host school is not going to play us first, but you never know. That could happen at some point. But yeah, so that's kind of what we've done, and yeah, I would guess the tournament that we host, people may think about, oh, okay, this is an opportunity to play, Oswego and maybe get some quality points with their SOS.
Jason Leone here, myself, Dan Tortora. Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora airs every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time on youtube.com/wakeupcalldt, facebook.com/wakeupcalldt, and facebook.com/live-now-dt. You can also listen on mixlr.com/wakeupcalldt and on wakeupcalldt.com's homepage. Once the show goes live, you can check us out in our many avenues: Stitcher, Spotify, TuneIn, Podbean, iHeartRadio, iTunes, and Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and MixLR by searching Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, or simply by searching one word, Wake Up Call DT. Inside of Cafe Kubal, we have spoken about a lot of things, spoken about family, about life, about Oswego State. Here in hour number 2, as we shift gears a little bit, but stay with collegiate athletics, thank God nothing in the last 18 months has changed. NIL, transfer portal, there are so many things that a coach has to deal with. Constitutional review, the NCAA is trying to figure out their identity right now. How are you tackling, and we will look at these piece by piece, but an overall broad paintbrush, in the middle of a pandemic, the NCAA is in an identity crisis. And there's a lot going on amidst that identity crisis. How are you as a coach handling this? Are you ear to the ground? Are you spending a lot of time with it? Are you kind of just letting it all in the background work itself out and take it as you go? How are you as a coach looking at the fact that we're living in a world where the amateurism of collegiate athletics is being in question, and now the NCAA in and of itself is trying to genuinely figure out who they are?
Well, being a coach at a Division III institution, some of this stuff isn't as magnified at our level.
Yeah.
As a sports fan, I follow, things, on social media, on the internet. I'm just by nature somebody that asks a lot of questions, so I rely on our compliance people and our athletic director to fill us in our bi-weekly staff meetings on what the latest is with the NCAA, with things like NLI, the transfer portal, recruiting, all the things that are going on. But Dan, you've got to pick and choose as a coach the things that you're going to really delve into. Those things are really, the transfer portal even, it helps us when we recruit. We've been very fortunate. We don't have a ton of guys leaving our program every year. You know what I mean? So it's not something that really has been a hot topic for us. The NIL stuff, I'm learning more about it, but again, Division III athletes don't have a ton of opportunity for financial gain with that yet, but it is brand new.
Yeah.
And if I don't understand something with anything with the rules, I usually go and ask. Always go and ask. So it's, I think it's a very interesting time, and it's like I mentioned with another topic you asked me about earlier on. You've got to be very adaptable, and we can sit around and complain and say this isn't that, but the reality is they're going to make a rule, and as a coach and as players and as people involved in this in athletics in college, we've got to be able to adjust and learn. Sitting around and kind of either complaining or being euphoric about rules or things that change, that's not really, to me, that's just not the way I've always handled things. So, but certainly very unique times, worth bringing up and worth talking about.
What do you think of name, image, and likeness? What is your stance on NIL? The fact that I'll preface it by saying a $1 billion corporation, the NCAA, is a non-for-profit, which makes no sense to me, but it just doesn't as a business person. But the amount of money that they make obviously doesn't exist without the kids. It doesn't exist without, male and female student athletes all over the country. So what is your stance on NIL? What do you think of name, image, and likeness, and the fact that each student athlete now can be essentially their own brand, They can sell themselves, and it doesn't have to be basketball related. You could have somebody on your team who wants to make money on YouTube with his music. You know, maybe he wants to go to iTunes, whatever it may be. So how do you assess name, image, and likeness, and what do you think about the opportunity?
Well, I mean, when it first came out, you know, you just, like anybody, you ask, like, again, this doesn't totally affect our levels, so I just was like, all right, I listen to people, like when Coach Boeheim's, he just seems to be really smart to me. When he starts talking about stuff, I find myself really listening to him.
Yeah.
I think he's just, the way his mind goes, and I've listened to him for so many years. When he has a press conference and he's asked about these things, I genuinely listen to what he has to say, because if I don't know about it, he's been around so long. I just tend to, in general, listen to people that are older than me that I think are really smart.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if this was exactly his opinion, but I remember him saying, like, how this is going to work. It's going to cause a lot of questions and potentially some issues in equality with what schools can do and what schools can't do.
I just spoke with him about it, and I look forward to sharing that with you, because I'm going to be sharing that next week. His thoughts, as not to interrupt you.
No.
His thoughts, and you saying like how he says it like it is, and there's more questions than answers for sure, but what he's talking about, it's a cautionary tale, and his answer to my question is very, very interesting, and in the world of him saying, hey, listen, the stuff that people used to do in the shadows now, they can do it out in the open.
Right.
And so that was another piece of what he talks about.
Yeah, so I just think with the name image, like they made the rule, right? So I'm not, once it's done, like, I don't focus on whether or not I like it or not. So now it's like, okay, how does this thing work? And for me, I got to make sure that our guys at a very smaller level, if they're going to delve into this, that they understand. We want to make sure nobody's breaking any rules, and there's something we met in a staff meeting about last week that I didn't even know, and it hasn't come up in our program, but as a coach, if you're like this could happen in Division III, like we're up in a smaller area in Oswego County, and somebody calls me and says, I want to hire your guys to do something at this YMCA or this or this. Like, I can't, as a coach, be involved in that in Division III. Like, I can't say to my 3 best guys or any of my guys, hey, this guy is looking. I can't be the middleman in making that relationship happen.
Yeah, you can't be like the agent. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's something like I didn't even know. Now, it hasn't come up in our program, but that was explained to us. So those are the things that I'm more cognizant of, is like, okay, what is allowed and what's not, so I make sure I'm a protective human for my players and my program. So we're, essentially I'm the caretaker of this program, and we got to make sure we don't break any rules, So those are some just preliminary thoughts on NIL.
Transfer portal, the player leaves D1, D2, and they want to come to you in Division III. By nature, and correct me if I'm wrong, they don't have to sit out a year. They can play because they're switching division, right? Is that
there's other things that go into that. They have to be. There's academic eligibility things. There's behavior eligibility. Like, in other words, if you leave Division I, Division II, and want to go to a school at our level, you have to be, in essence, eligible at that school you're leaving if you were to go back there, in order to be immediately eligible at our place. So if you have a behavioral issue that is taking your eligibility away at that school, or an academic issue, then you would have to serve a year of residency. The other thing that we don't do is, in Division III, we can't take a grad transfer from Division I or Division II. So if a kid graduates in Division I, Division II, we can't take a graduate student at our place and then be eligible right away. We can take a graduate student from another Division III.
Yeah.
So those are just some transfer portal things.
So a grad student cannot be. They have to do a year of residency, essentially?
No, they can't. We can't. In Division III, we can't take a grad transfer.
Okay.
We could take a transfer from Division I, Division II. Just if they have already graduated from Division I, Division II, we're not taking grad transfers in Division III.
So you can't take a grad transfer from D1, D2. You can take one from D3.
Yeah, and I think the reason being is because I would guess the NCAA sees it as an advantage, because there's so many Division III schools that don't have grad schools, so they don't have the opportunity to get these higher level players. They're like with us, it could potentially benefit us, or any type of national research university, like a University of Rochester where I went. They would have access to a grad transfer for a year from Division I, Division II. But Hamilton College, where my brother went and played down the road here in Clinton, they don't have graduate programs, so they wouldn't have access to that play. Okay. So it does certainly fit. You would, in terms of the rule, does make sense.
So essentially, it's something in the NCAA that's creating fairness, where we don't see any of it in D1. There is no fairness. How do you, when you look at the fact that, and I had this conversation last night, Alabama, right? Alabama, Texas A&M, schools like that in the South. They, in the SEC, they have so much money that I think Jimbo Fisher's buyout right now is like $70 million. Now, you couldn't do something like that.
Great agent.
Yeah, but you can't do something like that unless you have like that money. You know what I mean? Like when they wanted to get Willie Taggart out of Florida State, and it's like, well, how much is it? And it's like 34. It's like, okay, here you go. Like one guy's at $45 million. Go ahead. But they have that money. So Alabama, who's already top in recruiting in college football, Alabama and Nick Saban, they don't need the assist. But the NIL is going to give them an assist because you can give somebody, and we're already seeing players, I think there's a quarterback that's going to make over $1 million in an NIL deal. So you see something like this at an Ohio State, at an Alabama. They already have the advantage. Now they have even more of an advantage. So you got an advantage to an advantage, but a Syracuse, if Sean Tucker, this is how I paint the picture. Sean Tucker right now has over 1,000 all-purpose yards. He needed 5 yards to get to 1,000 all-purpose yards, rushing and receiving combined, in this last game against Clemson. First play of the game, 7 yards on a carry. He passed it, 1,002. Now he's on his way to become the first 1,000-yard rushing player at Syracuse, 1,000-yard running back at Syracuse for the first time in almost a decade since Jerome Smith did it in 2012. The last time an all-purpose, I believe was Mo Neal might have gotten somewhere within the region, but Prince Tyson Gully, in the year that Jerome got over 1,000 rushing, Prince had over 1,000 all-purpose. But they haven't had a 1,000-yard running back on the ground since 2012, and Sean Tucker, I would imagine, is going to break this. Now, here's my thing with Sean Tucker. Transfer portal is wide open. We're going to talk about this. You can go somewhere. You don't have to sit out 2 years if you went within conference anymore. So if you go to the ACC to ACC, you don't have to sit out 2. If you go to any other school, you don't have to sit out 1. You're immediately eligible. Guys are leaving in the middle of the season. We're seeing it happen with Syracuse. So transfer portal allows you to play right away. Go anywhere you want. I'm Sean Tucker. Maybe I end the season the leading rusher in the nation. Maybe I'm number 2. I should be on Heisman watch. But I'm at Syracuse. And we don't have the best record. What does NIL do to a Sean Tucker who could be thinking in his head, I'm good. I can go to Florida. If I go to Florida and I play in Gainesville, I'm going to make a lot more money in NIL than I'm going to make at Syracuse. I'm going to get more exposure in the Heisman world. So how does NIL and the transfer portal not create, for a place like Syracuse, even more of a disadvantage because they can't offer the money that some people can offer in the South or in California, and they can't offer necessarily the same exposure because they're not a winning program right now. So do you lose a Sean Tucker when he has more monetary advantage and more exposure advantage? Do the haves continue to have, and do the have-nots continue to have not? That's what I'm saying.
I'm not the right person to ask about this. I'm just so much of a traditionalist and old school guy. My thing would be, there's no guarantees when you leave, okay? Yeah. So Sean Tucker, to me, I go to every game. He's a unicorn here. There's no guarantees if he goes to these schools that have maybe more opportunities for him to make money on NIL. My thing is, his worth is going to be possibly in the NFL. And the best way for him to market himself down the road, if he can be patient, is to be here and be a Donovan McNabb type superstar, which we haven't had in a while here, and that could promote him to being this high first-round draft pick a year or two from now in the NFL. And if he goes to Florida, Texas A&M, wherever these places are, Ohio State, like, he might not stick out like a sore thumb there. Like, there's 4 guys like him. Like, okay, so he's here. He's getting the ball, what, 25, 30 times a game?
Yeah.
Everything, I mean, Dino said in the paper yesterday, right? Like, they changed from being a throwing team to a running. They've changed their offensive philosophy around him. There's no guarantees that happens in another school. That's me, but I'm a coach. I just be like, okay, you got a lot to give. To me, he's got a lot to lose.
Yeah.
He's got a lot to lose. Yeah. But look I don't know the young man, and I don't know. It's such a strange thing to me that all of a sudden, when somebody's good at a quote-unquote lower profile school, automatically it becomes the minor leagues and they have to go someplace else. Like, my thing is, like, Syracuse, and I know times change, they have pumped out so many NFL players here. And yes, we're in a little bit of a thing where we haven't won a whole lot in the last 25 years, but you still can make the NFL and do well here. I mean, look at, even in this last 3 or 4 years under Coach Babers, there's guys that have gone to the NFL, and not a ton of them, but they're doing well this year, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think anybody, this Tucker, he's got a chance to be an all-time great.
Yeah.
Why would you give that up? I mean, he can still get to his dreams from here. Yeah. And quite frankly, his marketability is greater getting the ball 30 times a game.
Yeah. Well, and I look at the fact, too, that because of the COVID, one of the things the NCAA has done right, giving everybody a free year, he's a second-year freshman.
I know.
So his freshman year of, I think, 600-something yards, his now freshman year 2, where he has, I would imagine, God willing, well over 1,000 yards. Then you're a sophomore, then you're a junior. I'm looking at Sean Tucker saying to myself, does this man get 3,500 yards at Syracuse? And his yards per carry is insane. So, I mean, their games, 14 yards per carry, 7 yards per carry. And this isn't on 5 carries. This isn't on one big play. Sean Tucker, on average, is giving you about 6 yards a carry overall throughout the season. In 6 to 7 games, he's had at least 100 yards rushing. In 6 to 7 games, he's had at least 1 rushing touchdown. And he went into the game against Clemson. Clemson's offense through 6 games, was it 16 and 5? No, through 5 games. Clemson's offense through 5 games had 13 touchdowns. Sean Tucker through 6 games had 11. He had almost the entire offense of Clemson in just his play. And so I look at Tucker and say to myself, he could go down statistically as one of the top 3, if not better. I'm looking at listen, when you look at some of these numbers, single game yards rushing in a season, people think Jim Brown, Ernie Davis about everything. Floyd Little, rest in peace, great friend of mine, and to Ernie as well. When we look at what these guys have done, if you look at the numbers in history, the Mo Neals and some of these other, Rob Drummond, who's right here in the community right down the road, in his yards per carry, there's names that aren't Jim Brown and Ernie Davis that have crept up that list. Sean is in a place where he is already doing this, and he could arguably end his career at Syracuse. If he's here for 4 years, he can end his career with the top single-game rushing record. He can end it with touchdowns. He can end it with, and granted they played less games back then, and I know in certain instances, but Sean Tucker is on pace to be statistically one of the 3 best running backs that Syracuse has ever had in the history of Syracuse. And by the way, Dino changed the offense for Sean, and I sat right down here with Rob Drummond right before the season started, and I said, run the dang ball. You got 5 guys. Now you don't have Jarvion, so you got 4. But you got Josh Huff, who's going to redshirt. You got Abdul Adams, who he doesn't play, and I don't know if that's because he didn't play during COVID, and he's butthurt about that. But Abdul's not playing that much, and he's good. We got Cooper Lutz, and you got Sean Tucker. Syracuse had no option other than to run the ball this year because you can't have 5 guys in your stable if you include Jordan and not do it.
What about Garrett Schrader? He's probably their second best running back.
And he is, statistically, what he's been able to do. So I have asked and pleaded and practically begged for 5-6 years now for Dino to run the ball. And now that he's running the ball, the team's 3-4, but arguably with a couple coaching choices on 4th and 2 and 4th and 1, this team has 5 wins, there's 6 wins. Dino's made some mistakes. And I respect Dino. And I would say that we have a good relationship, Dino. So he's made some mistakes. And this team has done a fantastic job. And I think as Dino navigates and learns, and this team navigates and learns, they're a team that is right there. They've lost, Schrader said it, we've lost 3 games by 3 points in a row. They lost to Florida State in a last-second field goal. They lost to Wake Forest in an overtime touchdown after they kicked a field goal. And they lost to Clemson with a field goal, 17-14. None of these teams blew them out. None of these teams look like they're leaps and bounds better than Syracuse. And so the record doesn't state who they are, in my opinion, but I will say this very proudly. Rob Drummond, we asked them to run the ball, and it took 6 years, but we're finally running because this is Syracuse's identity. This is who they are. And I, you know, the orange is the new fast and great. I mean, you can't do that. You can't do that in the ACC because you're not going to be faster than Florida State and Clemson and Miami. You're not. And if you want to pound for pound with these teams, it doesn't work. But if you want to ground and pound and condense the clock, look at what's happened with running the ball. They've shortened the clock. They've shortened the game. They've had longer possessions. They've had more purposeful possessions. And they've been able to dictate games, which is something they have not done in Dino Babers' era for the most part, is dictate the pace of a game. Running the ball has changed the entire dynamic of Syracuse football. So I proudly say, run the dang ball.
Yeah, Tucker's a stud. Let me just say one more thing about this whole thing with the portal.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is, I really hope he stays. I love watching him play. But you leave, the really good teams, even though he's great, let's just say somebody reached out to him and tried to poach him.
Yeah.
He's going to go in a situation where he's got to share touches.
Yeah.
If he goes to a losing team or a team, let's just throw out these 6-6, 7-5 teams in the SEC, the Tennessees, the Mississippi States, these, those type of people, the Minnesotas and the Big
Schrader
Ten.
can tell him about it. He was at Mississippi State.
My point is, he goes there, he's in the exact same situation, and relative to that level of football in the SEC, he's getting his rear end kicked and he's not running. And he's, I just think he's, and listen, I don't know anything about it, I haven't heard anything, but he's got an incredible situation here. And my assessment is not he's got a lot to gain. I think he's got a lot to lose if he doesn't make the right choice here. His focus should be on getting better every day, helping make a difference to help our team win, and then getting to the NFL, which he can do, in my opinion, a lot easier from here.
And I agree with you that he's, but go back to the NIL. There ain't nobody going to make more money than Sean Tucker unless your name is Buddy Boeheim. But because, Buddy, hometown kid, coach's son, that connection, Buddy's phenomenal, and what he's been able to do and how he carried the team.
I would give it time. Let's wait and see when he starts really getting on the national radar.
It's Tucker and Buddy. I look at that.
He'll have opportunities, trust me.
And he will.
So,
but I think Buddy's going to contest him in how much money. I think they'd be like the top 2. But Sean Tucker, to me, this is what you've been waiting for. And Syracuse's RB, I said, throw orange is the new fast out the window. Throw all this stuff out, all the cliches, all the quotes, all the whatevers, and say this. Go on the recruiting trail, Dino, with your whole staff, and just try me. We're RBU. We are RBU. And a kid will say, prove it. Jim Brown, Ernie Davis, Floyd Little, Rob Drummond's, 7 yards of carry that he's had, and everything that he did. Go to Rob Conrad and what he did in the NFL. Go to Larry Zonka. Go to Joe Morris. Go to Mo Neal, who they use as an H-back and a receiver for 2 years, and he still had over 2,500 rushing yards. He would have had more if they had used him properly.
How about James Monroe?
Look at James Monroe from Pennsylvania and what he did and how he's done it. You look at the late, great Walter Reyes. and what he did against Notre Dame and how he was incredible. So you go down the line. If Syracuse went out today and said, we're RBU, you could sell that to the fans right now. You can sell it to the country right now. When I talk to kids on the recruiting trail, I go, what do you know about Syracuse? You know what these kids told me? I don't know much, but I love the movie The Express. They know the history of the run. They know who Ernie is. They know who Floyd is. They know who Jim is. They know that world. They know 44. So you cannot take your most coveted number and throw that out the window. And that's what everybody wants to talk about with Sean Tucker now. You are RBU. Embrace it. RBU is Syracuse. Syracuse is RBU. And if you go out there and you do that with the guy you have right now and you recruit this way, if Syracuse plays their cards right, they got Sean Tucker, they got Josh Huff in the wings. This team is set up to put themselves in a position right now where they're going to get running backs for the rest of their history if they keep playing this Sean Tucker thing up and what's coming in the future. And oh my gosh, Josh Huff, did you see the way he played? They're setting themselves up for it. Run the ball and be RBU. It's sellable and it's easy and it's your history.
This is what my buddy's chiming in here. One of my closest friends, John Sorrell, one of my roommates from college.
Yeah.
He's been him and I talk every night. He says we can be the Wisconsin of the ACC. What's wrong with that? Player development, running back you, as you say.
Ranked in the top 25.
And just be solid, rock solid.
Yeah.
And we're not going to be pretty, but we're just going to win games. And I think that I think that's a great idea by my man JC.
Yeah, I mean, RBU makes sense, and that's why when the fans get mad, Garrett Schrader only threw 5. I don't care. I don't care if he throws 5 passes, 12 passes, or 42 passes. You want to win, right? And Schrader, look at what he did against Florida State. When you see the highlight reel and he's running a 53-yard, 56-yarder, and you see Chris Elmore, Rhino, just buck a guy and throw him out of the way, this is Syracuse. Get dirty, get nasty. I'm not saying break rules. I'm not saying hurt people. I'm saying get in the trenches. That's who you are. Syracuse is it's mud, it's rain, it's push, it's warfare. That's what I want with Syracuse football. Bring that to the ACC. Bring that, like, punch you in the mouth, dig you in the dirt, back you up, Do you know how demoralizing it is to be pushed into your own end zone every few yards? You throw a pass, okay, 37 seconds, Dino, you got a touchdown, but now they're back on the field and they can score. I don't want to get on and off the field in a minute. I want to get on and off the field in 4 minutes because now the game is shorter. And it is humiliating to keep having to go like that. And Sean Tucker, he is not stopping. I mean, this man has no quit in him. And before the season even started, I said, listen, his body got stronger. His body fat went down. He got more muscular. The way that he looked, I was like, man, this is a lunch pail kid. He is not giving anybody his carries. If you're surprised at who Sean Tucker is right now, I wish you could have been with me in practice in the few moments that we got to see during fall camp to see that this guy he was ready, he was hungry, and I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt, when I looked at him, I said, oh, damn, this man's all business. And he doesn't even talk about himself. He doesn't talk about himself. He's not like, oh, rah-rah. He just wants to go to work. It's like, can we shut up and play football? That's who he is.
Special guy.
And it's Syracuse history. This is what it is. This is who they are. So
Total overachiever.
Just run the ball, baby. That's all I want. Run that ball. So Garrett Schrader, your thoughts on what we'll spend a little time with Syracuse football, because I know you and I talk about it.
I'm a big
You go
fan.
to the games.
Every game.
So at the time we're talking here at Cafe Kubal, 343 Fayette Street in Manlius, New York. You can go to any of their locations, 3501 James Street, 324 West Water Street, 208 North Townsend Street, where Kubal Co-works is, and you can rent out space for your business, take some time. We were up in the podcasting headquarters up there last time. You can also go to 401 South Salina Street, all in Syracuse, inside of Golisano's Children's Hospital in downtown Syracuse by the Dome, and their newest location, their drive-through location on the corner of Route 11 and Taft Road in North Syracuse at Sweetheart Corners. So make sure you head over there, as well as right here to Manlius on 343 Fayette Street. 7 games in, what do you think?
Of Cuse?
Yeah.
Look at it. It's they're better. I think it's. Look, I'm more of a fan, so you asked me about basketball questions. I'm thinking tactics, and my mind's going. But I'm more of a fan.
But as a fan of Syracuse football,
it's tough. You want to. I think. I really think the Garrett Schrader move was necessary. I think he gives them a dimension where you have to account for the quarterback. I think DeVito, the first year when Dungy was a quarterback and DeVito would come in, you're sitting there and I'm saying, God, we're set now. When Eric leaves, this guy's going to step right in, and I don't know what happened. I think it's some bad luck. They had a really bad year with the offensive line last year, but it doesn't seem like Tommy had that mobility and quick decision making.
He wasn't built for the offense that Dino was trying to run.
Right, and I think looking at when Dino first got here and he had Dungy, I think having a mobile quarterback seems to be, without knowing the tactics of football, a little bit more advantageous for the way Dino wants to play offensively. So now you're accounting for 2 people. Yeah, you watch Garrett throw the ball and you're like, ugh. But the guy seems to he's got a toughness to him that I like, and he's athletic, and he's big and strong. And he's got 3 years left. I think there's a moxie there with him and Tucker, and the line has improved. I like what they're doing. I do, and I think the defensive coordinator the last 2 years has done a really good job. I see the bodies are bigger and stronger. I like what they're doing. I mean, as you mentioned, the 4 games they lost, okay, Rutgers was 10 points. Garrett didn't play that game. I wonder if maybe that would have made a difference.
They beat themselves against Rutgers.
They did. They drove it right down, and I think Taj might have fumbled the ball there the first quarter. And they were driving it right down, and that was a little bit of a buzzkill. And
Rutgers did nothing. If I was Schiano, 5 a.m. Sunday morning, I would have been like, "We're practicing because y'all didn't beat this team. They beat themselves."
He certainly was begging for a lot of calls on the side. It was like watching myself. Did you see it? He was all over the rep. Anyways, but. Yeah, okay, so bottom line, I think they're better. I think they've got an opportunity here down the stretch to kind of have some meaningful wins and hopefully get to a bowl game. Then they got something to build on going into next year, right?
Yeah.
I think Virginia Tech will be tough on the road, but you're looking at their schedule and there's not a game where you're like, oh, this, like a year ago, you're like, hide the women and children. You know what I mean? You don't know if they can beat this team. All the games left, I think Pittsburgh's probably, from what I've watched, the best team left on their schedule. The Pitt seems to have 1 or 2 head-scratching losses given their talent every single year, so you got them at home.
Yeah.
Other than that, there's not a game I don't see them talent-wise being in the ballpark,
Well, you got NC State on the road. That's a tough game.
Yeah.
You got at Louisville. They never win there. You got Boston College at home. You got Pitt at home. Those are your last 2 home games. Pitt's gotten better, and they've tried to do more. Pitt's gotten better.
Well, Pickett's a stud, right? I mean, is he the best quarterback in the ACC?
I wasn't sold on the Sam Howell hype because the way he played against Syracuse last year, they had to run the ball to beat him because he did nothing in the first half. I think he had like 60 yards or something ridiculous.
Well, Pickett's stats are off the charts.
But Kenny Pickett, for Pitt, I picked them to beat Tennessee on the road this year.
Did you?
I did.
That's a good pick.
I believe in Pat Narduzzi. I've known him the entire time he's been at Pitt. I'm a big fan of what he does. He by far had the most Italian mafia-style suit on at ACC kickoff, which I want to know who his tailor is. But Pitt is a very, very strong team. Boston College has tried to do a little bit more than just run the ball. And so, of the games they have remaining, in Virginia Tech, Justin Fuente, I had him on the list when Syracuse's vacancy opened up that they should hire him. I knew I said Justin Fuente is the hottest coach on the market, and he was hired within like 3 days of being on the market to Virginia Tech. And I like Frank Beamer. So to look at what they have left on their schedule, I think the game I feel best about is BC at home. I think NC State on the road, I'm concerned. I think Louisville, I'm very concerned on the road because it really doesn't even matter. For whatever reason, they get spooked there. They just don't play good football there. So,
I think this Saturday. I'm telling you.
Virginia Tech,
I'm telling you, this Saturday.
They push Notre Dame to the brink.
Syracuse is I know the losses have been frustrating the last 3 weeks. but I'm just telling you that I don't see any quit, and I really have a good feeling about this Saturday. Not that they'll win, but just I think they're going to be there in the fourth quarter, where if they make a couple plays, they can get it done. I don't think Virginia, yes, they're at home, but I don't think they're, I've watched them the last 2 weeks, they're not, oh my God, scary.
Well, their quarterbacks, Burmeister got really banged up against Notre Dame. So, I think, when leadership is hurt, that's something that you got to look at too. I think this game is going to be 27-27 in the fourth quarter.
That's my point. They're going to be right there.
And
they'll be right there.
Remember, Dino, the first thing that he could hang his hat on here was that he beat a top 20 ranked Virginia Tech team in the Dome. And now he has to show what he can do on the road against the Hokies, as this is part of the Coastal Rotator where they don't play each other every year.
Right.
So he won't see Virginia Tech for a while after this. And this is a statement game. And Justin Fuente's fighting for his job too. So, I think this will be a good game. Then you got BC. And then, you can't get spooked at Louisville. NC State, I had them, they were right there with Clemson 2 years in a row. And I said this year they're going to beat them. I said they're going to beat Clemson this year, NC State will, because they played better against better Clemson teams, and now they're going to beat them. And Doran did it. And then you got Pitt, and Pitt is a pain in the butt to play because Narduzzi is just, he's a good coach. And I got to say this, and I know fans might go freaking ballistic when I say this, but Syracuse and Pitt both started ACC play in 2013. And Pitt looks like they've been in the ACC longer and kind of, got a little comfortable in their chair. And Syracuse is just starting to arguably maybe find a place, but Pitt definitely got comfortable quicker. And they won the Coastal Division, in the past. So I think they've pushed Notre Dame. They made some mistakes a couple years ago and lost to Notre Dame. So Syracuse has a they very tough. Arguably 3 of these games are the toughest ones they're going to play this year. So they really need to buckle up and get ready for this. But they have to stay focused. You know what? Play loose. You have nothing to lose. None of these teams are necessarily afraid of you. They might be concerned about Sean, and they're going to key Sean. But they're not afraid of Syracuse as a whole. You can play a little bit more free right now. And I think that, they got to give it what they got. Show the world what a blue-collar town looks like when we work 27 hours in a 24-day period. That's what I want them to do. Show them what Syracuse is all about. We work hard. We don't quit. And we are the lunch pail community. So, I think if more guys just go out there, and the defense has got success in all defensive linebackers and secondary. Sean Tucker's successful. Garrett Schrader can run the ball and be multiple. He's a better passer than you think, and he needs to get comfortable. And, the kicking game struggled, but stop publicly. I know you're frustrated, but for goodness sakes, Andre Schmidt's the only kicker in the history of Syracuse to win the Lou Groza Award for Nation's Top Kicker. He just is, and he's now the all-time scoring leader. He passed Nate Trout, who had the record. Nate's a good friend from 96 to 99 when he played here. He's had the record all the way through for the highest scorer of any position in Syracuse history. And I put out there, Andre Schmidt, new scoring leader for Syracuse, and I had people responding to it saying, this post didn't age well. I was like, just because he missed the field goal doesn't mean that he's not still the record holder. And people forgot so quickly, this guy went from walk-on to starter to the nation's best kicker. So he's had a couple bad kicks, and now they want to throw him in the garbage, which is crazy to me. They shouldn't just use Sean. The other teams zero in on the same plays.
This is my aunt.
Yeah.
My great aunt.
Well, I said the split back situation with Abdul Adams or Cooper Lutz makes sense, and Dino hasn't split back in a while. But, how do you take the Schmitz? The fact that everybody wants to throw the guy in the garbage when the guy, nobody scored more points at any position cumulatively than he did at Syracuse. He beat a record that's been held for over 2 decades. And he was the nation's best kicker. And remember, Gary Anderson played here, Nate Trout played here, Olindo Mare played here. My goodness. The guy missed a field goal.
So, as I mentioned, I really enjoy Coach Boeheim's sound bites, so I'll steal one of his.
Yeah.
I think it's in sports, it's very difficult. You're treading lightly when you judge people based on a snapshot. So I don't think anybody should be judged on a snapshot. So this guy's done a lot of good things, and I also am a big believer, because I'm a coach, I think the really kind of easy thing to do when you're analyzing a loss is to look at the very last play of the game where he missed the field goal.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer, maybe this is old school, that these are the games are a compilation of many, many moments and plays.
Yeah.
So I don't think the game was decided on the field goal. I think the game was, I mean, you could go through, whether it be coaching decisions or playing decisions, they all make up an outcome, right? But it's, it's very difficult when you sit there and if you're going to analyze the very last play of the game and he missed the kick, that's not the way I look at it. And I also think, in defense of the fans, the Schmidt, what did he miss? Like one kick his the year he made Luke Gross Award, so you're spoiled right away.
Yeah.
And he had such an outlier of a season in a good way. Now anything less than that, people are like, oh, he's not having as good a year, and that's just not the case. So, I don't think the young man deserves any criticism that he gets. It wasn't like he missed a 25-yard field goal either.
It was 48.
Yeah. So I mean, this is a college kicker, and
it was also 4th and 1, and Dino has not gone for it on 4th and 7, 4th and 2, and 4th and 1.
I'm not getting into that whole
and,
thing.
And
I'm not a commentator. I'm not getting into all that.
But that it's a tough road to hoe there. But I would say, with Schmidt, it's just amazing how people wanted to say, well, he's not the scoring leader, because I was like, you don't take points off when you miss a field goal. He doesn't lose 3 because so I just, and I talked to Cole Murphy about him, because he was leaving when he was coming in, and I spoke with Cole because he passed Cole's record of field goals made at Syracuse.
Sure.
And Cole said, he's like, this guy's just so, he's never rattled. So my best advice to Andre Schmidt is, outside noise is called outside noise for a reason. By definition, it belongs on the outside. So don't let it in here. Go do your job, and they'll love you in 2 quarters when you make 3 field goals.
That's part of the position, though, right? That's a very unique position in any sport.
Yeah, you do the right thing, nobody cares.
It's like a closer in baseball. I mean, it's just you're going to hear the negatives more. I mean, it's like coaching, right? It's like when you lose, it's the coach's fault. When you win, it's he's got great play, and that's just what you sign on for. You've got to be able to manage and handle that, and that's never going to change,
So going to that as a coach, how do you handle public scrutiny of your players? That if somebody was
players?
Yeah, like if somebody came out against one of your players, like they are against Andre Schmidt, like Jim's had to deal with Buddy, when people are always only out there because he's your son, and all this garbage that people spew, and then they buy Buddy bucket shirts. How do you handle if somebody is to attack one of your guys publicly, and maybe he comes to you and says, hey, coach, on Twitter, I missed the game-winning shot. I got 57 messages of people just saying things about my mom, my dad, me. How do you handle player scrutiny?
Well, we don't get that type of...
Yeah, but in a world of thinking
But if
about
I was in that situation, I think the way that, coaches handle it, I think your first responsibility is privately to the player and making sure, if you mentioned this particular scenario where somebody's getting any type of hate mail or, things on their social media, emails, whatever, you want to make sure that and get a gauge for how the player is handling it, because kids are made up different ways. Some kids, it might really bother them. Some kids might be a little bit more, I wouldn't use the word mature, but they're like, coach, I'm good. Don't worry about it, And then I think publicly, when there's a time and a place, I wouldn't be a big presser, have a show type thing where I go off, I'm a man, I'm 40, I wouldn't be doing all that stuff. But more like, hey, listen, let's make sure we analyze this as a fan base here are the actual numbers.
Yeah.
You know, we deal with facts, okay? It's Andre Schmidt, for instance. This is what he's done. I mean, I thought the one thing when the paper wrote about Boeheim and Patino, I thought that press conference was one of the best things I've ever seen. It's like, you don't judge coaches, players, situations based on a small segment. It's in life. You don't do that. You know, it'd be like, you know, you go and you win as a coach 10 straight years ago to the NCAAs, and then on the 11th year, you go 12 and 13. Does that mean you're not fit? You're not, you know, like a brick hit you and all of a sudden you forgot how to coach? I mean, every player, coach, if you do this long enough, is going to go through that. Mm-hmm. And it's tough because you have people at this level, Syracuse level, that pay good money to see the games.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, they're sick of losing. Okay. So things get magnified. But as a coach, I think there's a protective Papa Bear type thing that you got to do, or Mama Bear if you're a female coach. And I think that's part of it. And, you know, but I think looking at things and educating people on a factual basis is the way that I would handle it.
Isn't it amazing that when people take snapshots and try to judge people, it's always negative? But if you said the coach, you know, if you win 10 years in the 11th year, you go 12 and 13, they don't snapshot and say for 10 years that you won. They all, you know, it's always the negative snapshot.
But as a player and as a coach, you've got to understand this is what you kind of sign on for. You know what I mean? It's not, you know, one of the things I tell, we don't get any of that type of stuff at our level, which is nice. But, you know, I'm very quick to remind players that, like, I have this talk with my better players, like, you are going to get a little bit more attention even at our level than the guy that doesn't maybe score as many points. But that comes with responsibility. It's not just you get the ball a lot, you score a lot, you get interviewed by the school newspaper and local media a little bit more, even at our level. It's you're going to deal with, you've got to play well all the time, and there's scrutiny internally with our team and with the small amount of followers we have when you don't perform. So that's a great personal skill, I think, to have, you know, is to be able to handle those things, you know.
Well, like I say, is in the line of LL Cool J, one of the greatest rappers of all time.
He is.
He said, don't let the wins go to your head, the losses go to your heart.
That's right.
And, you know, you really got to, you know, and I've had to do it, and a lot of people have to do it. You got to keep the outside noise outside because, again, by definition, that's where it belongs. Outside noise is outdoors. It's not in your house. It's not in your heart. It's not in your mind. It's not in your soul. It's not in your body. It's somebody's opinion. And I think somebody had said it very well. They said, other people's opinions of me are none of my business. So I think Jim Boeheim would probably roll with that. So before I let Jason Leone go here, Oswego State Lakers men's basketball head coach, myself, Dan Tortora, here on Wake Up Call for you inside of Cafe Kubal on 343 Fayette Street in Manlius, New York. Our proud studio partner and proud to tour the Cafe Kubals every single month. So maybe coming to one in your neighborhood next month. So make sure you check out, look out for us on social media. You can find out first where we're going to be at Wake Up Call DT on Facebook, at Call DT on Twitter, and at Wake Up Call _DT on Instagram. And of course, wakeupcalldt.com. You can bookmark and subscribe for free to wakeupcalldt.com. But go back to the NCAA and their constitutional review and figuring out their identity. I said about 5 years ago, 5 to 10 years from now, the NCAA will not exist the way that we know it, if they exist at all. About 5 years from the moment I said that, 5 to 10 year mark, they're now figuring out how to exist in today's world. How much of this is the fault of the NCAA and maybe some missteps, and how much of this is just the evolution of sports that we have to have a constitutional review?
Well, I don't know enough about it about, you know, things that maybe the NCAA has done wrong. I don't follow that. Again, part of the Division III model is we're just not out there as much to be the recipient of wrongdoings from the NCAA. So we don't see that quite as much. So for me to comment on that would be a little bit delinquent on my part. But I, you know, in terms of just the overall you know, constitutional review, my thing is, like, the NCAA like things have changed 10 years before that and 10 years before that, and they're going to change every incremental time period from now until the end of our lives. So I think a big thing in athletics has always been adaptability. That's just so way above my level that I really don't spend time worrying about stuff like that. I know our institution's part of the NCAA, but eventually there's going to be something that comes down from this. I know that, and then we're going to have to roll with whatever this is. And chances are, we may not agree with it initially.
Yeah.
So I don't have too much for you on that topic, unfortunately, Dan.
Is going off of that though? Is NCAA Division III the purest form of collegiate athletics still then?
I don't know about that. It's a very unique setting. I'll put it that way because, you really the model of Division III is built on participation. It's built on that the athletic program model is part of the holistic view of what a college education is supposed to be. So, at the Division I level, Syracuse, just any Power 5 school, any Division I school, there's some separation from athletics from the rest of the campus. Whether it be just the housing and the dining halls that they have separated for the athletes. Like our student athletes that play at this level, they're on the same model of financial aid.
Yeah.
They're taking the same classes. They're living in the same dorms. They're afforded the allocation of resources is somewhat similar. Whether you are in the dance club, you're in the Young Republicans Club, or you're playing college athletics, these things are all built into an educational model. So it's very unique in that way.
So you think there's fairness? There's a level playing field at D3?
Well, relative to D3, there's always levels within levels. So, all right, is it fair? No, but there's more of a financial commitment. Like I went to the school at University of Rochester. Okay, you just do math. It costs, I think now, $75,000 to go there a year. Okay, they've got, I think, 5,000, 6,000 undergraduate students. Their alumni giving potential is so much greater than a school like SUNY Oswego. Okay, the SUNY school might not even be a good example because the SUNY's a different entity. But take another private school. I'm not even going to name a name. So yes, they're going to have a few more resources that can be allocated than some other schools. But the actual functional model, in terms of, when you practice, when you play, how many games you're going to play, how you're going to treat student athletes, those things are all very, very similar. And I think the key element is typically these athletes, there's some outliers, they're not going to play professionally in their sport. They're getting a degree and they're going to use that experience to help transform their life after their athletic experience, So that's a key element of Division III. And the other element is for the coaches. We are members of the campus community. So whether it be, right now I was talking to my AD yesterday, I'm serving on 3 different committees that, yes, they involve athletics, but they really have nothing. I'm on a diversity, equity, inclusion committee. I'm on a financial committee for the college. I was on a strategic planning committee for the college. It has nothing to do with athletics. That's for the college. And then I teach as well. So, my job, yes, I'm a basketball coach, but I am ingratiated into the campus, and that's very typical of a coach at the Division III level. Where in Division I, it's okay, here's your money, here's your resources, you got 5 years. Win or you're gone. Which I think is a very, you're going to pay, I told you off the air, it's you're going to pay me $4.5 million to coach, and I don't, perform. Get rid of it. That's a very fair, a very advantageous deal for the coach. You know what I mean? They're making a lot of money, and
some coaches get fired and their buyout's going to take care of them for the rest of their
That's
lives,
my point.
even if they
That's
never
my
coach
point.
again.
And some of it's unfair, but it's you're getting a really, really good situation, And what people sometimes don't remember is if it's like the jobs typically don't change a ton after you take the jobs. Like if you don't like the situation after you assess it during the job, like don't take. You always have the option to not take the job.
Yeah.
You know. Anyways.
No, I feel you, and I understand you very much so. And one of the final points, realignment, you know, it's happening at D1, but it also happens in D3.
Yes.
And the realignment
That's
of,
happening.
you know, the Atlantic East a couple of years ago that Marywood University is in,
Yep.
as one of the 7 founding members, they created a new conference.
Yep.
And when they created this new conference, they put themselves in a situation where, and you know, and people don't readily know this, as a member of that conference, because it was new, they lost their AQ, they lost their automatic qualifier, all those teams for 2 years. And then coming off of that, you go into a pandemic. So essentially, there hasn't really been a ton of time where they've been an automatic qualifier. And you talk about how hard it is in the D3 to get into the tournament. And without the AQ, you know, you make it a dang near impossible. And it's a new conference in the history. So, you know, what can you say about realignment, knowing that, you know, Division III is constantly moving and doing different things. And I know from being an alum of Marywood how they've been in multiple conferences and now are a founding member of a new one.
Well, just looking at the landscape of college athletics, you're seeing a lot of Division II schools are making the decision to either go Division III, but a lot of them are making the move to Division I.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And
Was there 350 plus D1 men's basketball programs now?
I would, yeah.
It's
I don't know the
insane,
exact, but
yeah.
but Division II is losing membership. Division III is gaining membership, and Division III is the biggest number in terms of members. I think we're at 450, 460, something like that. So we just realigned all of our regions, for instance. So there are teams that have left our region and come into our region. The NCAA tournament has realigned a bunch of stuff. So we have some schools that are in our region now that we compete against to get into the NCAA tournament that were not in there last year. Some good teams. So.
You know, and how do you look at realignment, knowing that, I mean, everybody's paying attention to the Power 5 in Oklahoma and Texas and BYU and Houston and UCF and Cincinnati and yada, yada, yada. But in D3, you're dealing with, like you said, people are in our region now that are in our way. So how do you look at it as a coach, knowing that D3 is not only going through realignment, that's not magnified on a national scale, but to the fact that, like you said, it's over 400 schools and this much of a window to get into the tournament. I would imagine at some point the NCAA, in its constitutional review, I would love for them to look at D3 and try and come up with a better model that if you have 450 schools and you got 60 spots or whatever it may be, I mean, that maybe there's, I wouldn't want to split like Division 3 and 4 and create something like that, but I would like to hope there's got to be a way that more people can be involved, because with that amount of schools, I would imagine that, you know, people complaining of the 300 plus in D1, somebody's getting left out of 68. At D3, the reality that there could be 16 teams being left out that maybe could win it all. I mean, I would hope that in this constitutional review, D3, maybe there is a model, like you said, something will eventually come down the pipeline and affect us, and we may like it, we may not. Is there something you hope for when the NCAA looks at all 3 divisions? That maybe they could work something with
I mean,
D3?
I'm just wired. I'm wired a little different. Like, I don't, you know, my thing is like, I gotta worry about our program. Like, my model's not going to change. We got to schedule good teams out of conference. We got to recruit well, coach well, and inevitably we got to win 3. The thing that won't change is to get to the NCAAs, we got to win 3 games the last week of February. That's what every year. That's not changing.
Yeah.
For us. Then you say, okay, well, what if, you know, we want to give ourselves that safety net if for some reason we don't win our conference tournament.
Yeah.
Or we win our regular season, we get upset in the conference tournament. What's the best way to be that second or third school? Because we've had times where 3 teams have gotten in.
Yeah.
How do we handle that? And that's not going to change based on realignment, because we still got to go out and play the best 7 games that we can play to help our SOS. We're playing in a significant league in terms of the RPI, we're always, every year I've been here, we've been in the top 11 out of 47 leagues in terms of strength with RPI. So we've got my focus is on coaching the team, recruiting really well, and scheduling really well. And then at the end of February, after we've hopefully gotten in our conference tournament, we're going to have to win 3 games that week, and we keep it real simple. I think worrying about all that other stuff that's going to basically be decided for us, I think that's adding another layer that could potentially take some focus off what is really crucial.
Brockport, Buffalo State, Cortland, Fredonia, Geneseo, New Paltz, Oneonta, Plattsburgh, Potsdam, and Oswego State. When I say SUNYAC to you, when we look at this conference, what are the words that come to mind? And then secondly, to go off of realignment and whatnot, like you said, there's decisions going to be made for us that we can't control. Has the SUNYAC put itself in such a place that it's built enough national respect with almost 50 leagues that it's not just an automatic qualifier, but is the SUNYAC in a place where you feel like NCAA Division III, that committee respects the SUNYAC?
I think so. There's better leagues out there, but I think our league is very competitive, especially at the top. The team that typically wins our league usually has a really good chance of making it to the second weekend of the tournament. You know what I mean? Typically the team that wins our league hosts a pod the first weekend, the first and second round, which gives you a great opportunity to move forward, playing at home. I think that the thing that comes to mind with our league is how much parity there is. I don't know. I'd have to look this up, but I've been in the league for 9 years. I've coached a team.
Yeah.
In the last 10 years, we've had 5 of the 10 teams that have won the conference. I would wager that there's maybe one other league in the country that can say they've had 5 different champions in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Maybe one, maybe 2. So I think that is a tribute to the league because all the schools were all under the same umbrella of SUNY. We all cost the same. The financial aid structure is the same. So in Division III, that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
Because with private institutions, there's different, models of how financial aid is allocated.
Yeah.
Within our league, at some level, the way kids make decisions typically at our level comes down to money. And all 10 schools are on an even playing field regarding that part of competing. The budgets might be a little bit different, the commitment level might be a little bit different at a few of the schools, but the actual how students choose a school is pretty much the same. So that contributes to great parity within our league,
Yeah.
which is a very much a positive.
Fairness, an even playing field. What conferences,
Well,
division
fair
III-
isn't always equal.
That's true.
Fair is not always equal.
That's true. But the notion of what you're getting at, that they're choosing a school for the love of the school and maybe hopefully not so much because of the difference in how much it costs, so to speak.
Correct.
That they're actually looking to the purity of who's the coach, what's the program like. Because, if I was a coach, I'd want you to choose me. I wouldn't want you to say, I'm coming to you because it's $3,000 cheaper.
And the majors, like if you, let's say you're coming out of high school and you want to be a phys ed teacher, well, you're going to automatically look at Brockport or Cortland in our league. All right, we don't have phys ed. All right, so your field of study, like Fredonia and Potsdam, for instance, they're very strong in music and theater and things like that, amongst other majors. All of our schools used to be known as like teachers' colleges, So
Yeah.
So the major and that type of thing plays into things. The relationship with the coach always does as well.
Yeah. So it's all important here as we speak here with Jason Leone. What other leagues would you say, Division III wise, when it comes to men's basketball, who are those leagues that you really feel are the upper echelon?
Well, I think the NESCAC is a really good league. The league that Hamilton plays in locally here, they're typically one of the top 2 or 3 leagues every year. Williams Amherst, one of my close friends from University of Rochester, fellow alum, Tim Sweeney is a coach in that league at Conn College, so I've really followed that league quite a bit. Adam Stockwell from Hamilton's a friend of mine, so that league, if you look at, typically they're getting 4 or 5 teams every year into the NCAA tournament. The league I played in college, the UAA, that the University of Rochester is in, that's a national league. So they have Wash U in St. Louis, University of Chicago, Emory, Case Western Reserve in Cleveland, Carnegie Mellon, Pittsburgh, Emory in Atlanta, Brandeis in Boston. University of Rochester, and probably and NYU in New York City.
Yeah.
So they fly all over the country playing these games. That league is typically a league that gets 3, sometimes 4 teams in the league, and usually see teams from their league in the second weekend or further in the NCAA tournament. So those are 2 really good leagues. In terms of public schools, the Wisconsin Intercollegiate Athletic Conference, those state schools out there, Wisconsin Whitewater, you probably know from great football teams out there. That league is a really good league as well in terms of the public schools. And then you can pick and choose year to year some other leagues that are really good. Those are a couple of the ones that I always kind of pay attention to a little bit.
Final note, what should we know as a kind of maybe last Oswego State men's basketball this season is blank? I know we talked about some things that were on your mind, and we talked about your coaches that have moved on, coaches coming in, spoke about the team, but what's a final word that you'd like people to know as we are, 24 days away? So
I would say we're incredibly euphoric that we are back to working together. We're going to have a very patient approach, that this is going to be a long, process-oriented approach to getting our team to where we need to be in February.
Yeah.
And then we are cautiously optimistic about our talent level and our ability to possibly compete for a league championship. As I mentioned, if they did a preseason poll, there is no way we would be picked first, but I think it's not where you start, it's where you finish, and I feel very comfortable saying, as long as some things fall into place and we don't have any adversities that we're not foreseeing, that we'll have a shot come the last week of February to be one of the better teams.
Well, and you said you appreciate Jim Boeheim's words, and you know how he feels about preseason polls. So with that being said, Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, live for you every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time, youtube.com/wakeupcalldt, facebook.com/wakeupcalldt, and facebook.com/livenowdt, as well as on mixlr.com/wakeupcalldt, and the homepage on wakeupcalldt.com. You can search Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, or one word, Wake Up Call DT, on Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, Podbean, iHeartRadio, iTunes, and Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and MixLR. And a proud thanks to all of our partners here in Central and Upstate New York: Cafe Kubal, Carvel DeWitt, the Wildcat Sports Pub, Honda City of Liverpool, Mon Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory, Avicoli's, Progressive Dental, Chick-fil-A Cicero and Chick-fil-A Clay, the Lemoyne Dolphins, Pizza Man, as well as Canine Camp Dog Daycare and Millhouse Market, Canine Campground Dog Boarding, PB&J's Lunchbox, Victory Sports Medicine Orthopedics, and Mother's Cupboard, and of course Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, the proud multimedia marketing partner of Lemoyne College Dolphins and the Marywood University Pacers. With that being said, Jason Leone of Oswego State's men's basketball program. As always, Jay, it's always good to have you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, my friend. Wonderful to spend the last couple hours with you.
Cafe Kubal, make sure you make your way out to any of their locations here in Central and Upstate New York, including where we are today in Manlius on 343 Fayette Street.